August 13th, 1944, 0615 hours, 15,000 feet, above Ploiești, Romania. First Lieutenant Marcus Patch Callahan pressed his thumb against the firing trigger, feeling the entire airframe shudder as 650 caliber machine guns roared to life. Through his gun sight, a Messerschmitt Bf 109 filled his vision, the German pilot completely unaware that death was approaching in an aircraft the Americans themselves had tried to scrap 3 times. The fighter plane Callahan was flying looked like it had been assembled in a junkyard by a committee of drunken mechanics. The nose section came from a P-51B that had crash-landed in Tunisia. The wings were salvaged from 2 different P-51Cs, destroyed in separate incidents at different air bases. The tail section originated from a fighter that had been written off after a mid-air collision over Italy. The engine had been rebuilt 4 times using parts from 6 different aircraft. Even the propeller blades didn't match, 2 from original Mustang production, 1 from a damaged spare. Ground crews at the 332nd Fighter Group had nicknamed it the Scrap Heap Special. Pilots who saw it called it the Flying Junkyard. The base commander had issued orders twice to have it stripped for parts, but every time someone tried to decommission Callahan's Patchwork fighter, he would take it up and demonstrate performance that shouldn't have been possible from such a mechanical Frankenstein. When Callahan had been assigned to this aircraft in June 1944, he'd walked around it 3 times in silence, examining every mismatched panel, every visible repair weld, every indication that this machine had been cobbled together from the remains of dead aircraft. His crew chief, Technical Sergeant Raymond Garcia, had apologized immediately. "Lieutenant, I know it looks like hell, but it's all we've got. Every other fighter in the squadron is already assigned. This one just came out of depot maintenance. Technically airworthy. Barely." Callahan had run his hand along the fuselage, feeling the different textures where replacement panels had been riveted into place. The metal was different colors where sections from different aircraft had been joined. The paint didn't match. Nothing matched. It was an embarrassment. "Does it fly?" Garcia had hesitated. "Yes, sir, after a fashion." "Does it shoot?" "All 6 guns tested functional yesterday." "Then it's mine." The reaction from other pilots in the squadron had been immediate and merciless. Captain Robert Schenk, the flight operations officer, had actually laughed when he saw Callahan's assigned aircraft. "Jesus Christ, Callahan, did they assign you a fighter or a spare parts bin? That thing looks like it was assembled by blind men in the dark." Lieutenant David Morrison, a veteran pilot with 11 confirmed kills, had been equally dismissive. "I wouldn't fly that death trap to the latrine, let alone into combat. First time you pull more than 4 Gs, that airframe is going to come apart like wet cardboard." Even the enlisted ground crew who serviced the aircraft treated it with barely concealed contempt. They called it Patch's junk, a double reference to Callahan's nickname and the aircraft's condition. During pre-flight inspections, mechanics would joke about using duct tape and baling wire to hold it together. The aircraft became a squadron punchline. But what nobody except Garcia knew was that Marcus Callahan had grown up in Wichita, Kansas, where his father worked as a manufacturing engineer at Boeing. Callahan had spent his childhood and teenage years in aircraft factories, watching skilled workers transform raw materials into flying machines. He understood aircraft construction at a fundamental level that most pilots never achieved. When Callahan examined his Patchwork fighter, he didn't see a collection of mismatched parts. He saw an opportunity. Each component had been selected from damaged aircraft for a reason. The nose section from the Tunisia crash had the best preserved instrument panel. The wings from the 2 different aircraft had been chosen because their structural spars were undamaged despite exterior damage. The tail section from the mid-air collision had actually been reinforced during repair, making it stronger than original specification. More importantly, Callahan recognized that this aircraft, precisely because it had been assembled from multiple sources, had been subject to more rigorous inspection than factory-fresh fighters. Every joint had been examined, every system had been tested, every potential failure point had been identified and addressed. The aircraft might look terrible, but it was mechanically sound in ways that standardized production aircraft sometimes weren't. Callahan spent his first 2 weeks with the aircraft learning its characteristics. He discovered that the mismatched wings created a slight asymmetry that actually improved roll rate to the right. The rebuilt engine, because it had been assembled with hand-selected components, ran smoother than factory engines. The replacement tail section, being heavier than standard, provided better directional stability at high speeds. Most significantly, he discovered that the aircraft's center of gravity, because of the different component weights, was further aft than standard P-51 specifications. This made the fighter more maneuverable, but also less stable. A dangerous characteristic for inexperienced pilots, but a decisive advantage for someone who understood how to exploit it. His first combat mission came on July 2, 1944. The 332nd Fighter Group was tasked with escorting B-17 bombers attacking oil refineries in Ploiești. German fighters rose to intercept the formation, and Callahan's flight engaged a group of Messerschmitt Bf-109s. The engagement lasted 4 minutes. Callahan maneuvered his Patchwork fighter through violent combat maneuvers that should have torn a standard P-51 apart. He pulled 7 G-turns that left his wingmen unable to follow. He executed snap rolls at speeds where most fighters would have structural failure, and most remarkably, he shot down 2 Bf-109s in his first combat engagement. When he landed back at base, his aircraft looked even worse than when it had departed. Bullet holes stitched across the wings, hydraulic fluid leaking from damaged lines, one landing gear leg extending slower than the other. But the fighter had brought him home, and more importantly, had given him the maneuverability to kill 2 German fighters. The squadron's reaction was mixed. Some pilots acknowledged his success. Others insisted he'd been lucky. Captain Schenck examined the battle damage and shook his head. "You pushed that airframe too hard, Callahan. One of these days, you're going to pull a turn, and those wings are going to fold up like a cheap tent." Garcia and his ground crew spent 18 hours repairing the damage. They patched the bullet holes with aluminum from 3 different damaged fighters. They replaced the hydraulic lines with parts scavenged from a written-off aircraft. They adjusted the landing gear using components from the spare parts depot. When they finished, the aircraft looked even more patchwork than before. Over the next month, Callahan flew 16 combat missions in his Patchwork fighter. He accumulated 6 confirmed kills and 3 probables. His aircraft accumulated more battle damage, more replacement parts, more mismatched panels. It became a flying catalog of aircraft salvage, with components from at least 20 different P-51s incorporated into its structure. The mockery intensified rather than decreased. As Callahan's kill count grew, other pilots attributed his success to luck rather than skill. They insisted that any competent pilot could achieve similar results in a proper aircraft. The fact that Callahan was accomplishing this in what they considered a mechanical abomination only made them more dismissive. Lieutenant Morrison was particularly vocal. "Sure, Patch has gotten lucky a few times, but that junkyard special he's flying is a disgrace to this squadron. We look like amateurs when other groups see us operating aircraft that look like they've been through a scrap metal press." The squadron commander, Colonel James Whitfield, received multiple complaints about the aircraft's appearance. Several pilots formally requested that Callahan be assigned a standard fighter and his current aircraft be permanently grounded. The argument was always the same: unit cohesion, professional appearance, maintenance standardization. Colonel Whitfield called Callahan to his office on August 10th. "Lieutenant, I'm under pressure to take that aircraft away from you. Half my pilots think it's an embarrassment. My maintenance officer says it's a logistical nightmare. Group Command has asked why we're operating a fighter that looks like it was assembled from garbage. Callahan had expected this. Sir, with respect, that aircraft has brought me home from 19 combat missions. It has 6 confirmed kills. It has never failed mechanically in combat. I understand it doesn't look regulation, but it performs better than regulation." The colonel studied him for a long moment. Better than regulation? The mismatched components create performance characteristics that benefit aggressive maneuvering. The aft center of gravity makes it more responsive. The rebuilt engine runs smoother. The reinforced tail section handles high-speed stress better than standard construction. You sound like an engineer, not a pilot. My father was an aircraft engineer, sir. I grew up understanding that appearance and performance aren't the same thing. Colonel Whitfield leaned back in his chair. I'm going to give you 6 days, Callahan. 6 days to prove that aircraft is more than a lucky junkyard dog. After 6 days, if you haven't demonstrated clear superiority, I'm grounding it permanently and assigning you a standard fighter. Understood? Yes, sir. And Callahan, when I say demonstrate superiority, I mean performance that justifies keeping an aircraft that violates every aesthetic standard the Army Air Forces maintains. Make those 6 days count. Callahan returned to his quarters and studied mission schedules for the coming week. August 11th through 16th would see intensive operations against German oil facilities, airfields, and transportation networks in Romania and Hungary. Intelligence estimated heavy Luftwaffe resistance, multiple large-scale bomber raids requiring fighter escort. Conditions would be perfect for air combat. On August 11th, the 332nd Fighter Group launched a maximum effort mission escorting B-24s against the Ploiești oil complex. German fighters rose to intercept in force Focke-Wulf 190s, Messerschmitt Bf 109s, even a few Messerschmitt Bf 110s, with heavy cannon armament designed specifically for bomber destruction. Callahan's flight encountered a swarm of 4 FW-190s attempting to attack the bomber formation from above. The German fighters dove through the escort screen at high speed, executing the classic bounce maneuver that had destroyed countless Allied bombers. But Callahan had positioned his Patchwork fighter above the rest of his flight, using altitude advantage to counter the German dive. As the FW-190s flashed past the main escort formation, Callahan rolled inverted and pulled through in pursuit. The violent maneuver would have stressed any fighter to its limits. His Patchwork aircraft shuddered and groaned, mismatched panels flexing but held together. He closed on the trailing FW-190 at a combined speed exceeding 600 miles per hour. At 400 yards, he opened fire. The concentrated stream of 50 caliber bullets walked up the German fighter's fuselage, shattering the canopy and hitting the pilot. The FW-190 rolled left and entered an uncontrolled dive. Callahan pulled up hard, compressing the dive energy into a zoom climb that carried him back above the bomber formation. He spotted a second FW-190 attempting to line up on a damaged B-24. Rolling inverted again, he pulled through and closed rapidly. This time the German pilot saw him coming and attempted to evade, throwing his fighter into a tight defensive spiral. The standard P-51 response to this maneuver would have been to extend away, maintain energy, and re-engage from advantage. But Callahan's Patchwork fighter, with its aft center of gravity and enhanced roll rate, could do something standard Mustangs struggled with. He matched the German spiral, maintaining pursuit through 6 complete rotations while slowly closing the distance. At 200 yards, he fired a sustained burst. Hits sparkled across the FW-190's wing root. The German fighter's right wing suddenly folded upward, structural failure from combat damage and G-loading. The aircraft tumbled out of control. Callahan didn't watch it fall, already scanning for the next threat. A Bf-109 appeared in his peripheral vision, the German pilot attempting to engage Callahan from his left side. Callahan snapped his fighter into a maximum rate turn, pulling so hard that his vision grayed at the edges. The Patchwork aircraft groaned, metal stress singing through the airframe, but turned inside the Germans' firing solution. Now Callahan and the Bf-109 were in a classic turning fight, each pilot attempting to maneuver onto the other's tail. This type of engagement typically favored the more maneuverable aircraft. The Bf-109 was lighter and could theoretically outturn the heavier P-51. But Callahan's Patchwork fighter wasn't a standard P-51. Its modified characteristics gave it turn performance that shocked the German pilot. After 3 complete circles, Callahan achieved firing position. A 2-second burst at close range destroyed the Bf-109's engine. Coolant erupted in a white stream. The German pilot bailed out immediately, recognizing his aircraft was finished. 3 kills in 7 minutes. Callahan's wingman, struggling to keep pace with his aggressive maneuvering, could barely believe what they were witnessing. The Patchwork fighter that everyone had mocked was dancing through combat like nothing they'd ever seen, but the engagement wasn't finished. 2 more Bf-109s dove on Callahan's position, the German pilots coordinating their attack to catch him between them. This scissor attack was one of the Luftwaffe's most effective tactics against lone fighters. Callahan recognized the trap immediately. Instead of trying to evade both attackers, he turned directly toward the first Bf-109, accepting a head-on engagement. Both fighters opened fire simultaneously at 800 yards, closing at a combined speed of nearly 700 miles per hour. Head-on attacks were gambling with death. Whoever maintained course longest had the best chance of scoring hits, but also the greatest risk of collision. Callahan held his course until 400 yards, firing continuously, then broke hard right. The German pilot, perhaps intimidated by the Americans' aggressive response, broke left slightly earlier. Callahan's bullets had found their mark. The Bf-109 streamed smoke and dove away. The German pilot attempted to reach friendly territory, but the damaged fighter crashed 10 miles from the target area. The second Bf-109, having lost its wingman and facing an opponent who had just killed 4 fighters in 8 minutes, chose discretion over valor. The German pilot disengaged, diving away toward lower altitude and safety. When Callahan landed back at base, his aircraft looked like it had flown through a metal shredder. Bullet strikes across both wings, cannon shell damage to the tail section, hydraulic fluid and oil coating the belly. Several panels were cracked from high-G maneuvering, but it had flown, it had fought, and it had won. 4 confirmed kills in a single mission. Garcia and his crew swarmed over the aircraft, assessing damage, planning repairs. The work would take all night. August 12th brought another maximum effort mission, this time against airfields near Budapest. German fighters rose to defend in even greater numbers. Callahan's flight engaged a mixed formation of Bf-109s and FW-190s, attempting to intercept B-17s. The engagement developed into a massive swirling dogfight, with over 60 fighters involved. In the chaos, Callahan eliminated 2 Bf-109s and damaged a third so severely that it was later listed as a probable kill. His Patchwork fighter absorbed more battle damage, more replacement parts, more evidence that it shouldn't be flying but somehow was. 6 confirmed kills in 2 days. The squadron was starting to pay attention. August 13th dawned with weather forecasts predicting clear skies over Romania, perfect conditions for the largest raid yet planned against Ploiești. Every available bomber would strike the oil complex that provided Germany with critical fuel. Every available fighter would escort them. The Luftwaffe would defend with everything they had. If you're enjoying this incredible story of innovation and determination, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We bring you the most amazing untold stories from military history. Don't miss what happens next in Callahan's legendary 6 days. Now, back to August 13th. The 332nd Fighter Group launched at 0530 hours, 72 P-51s climbing into the dawn sky. Callahan flew in the lead element, his Patchwork fighter now infamous throughout the group. Pilots who had mocked it 3 days earlier were now watching it with grudging respect. The raid developed exactly as intelligence had predicted. Over 100 German fighters rose to intercept the bomber stream. The sky over Ploiești became a 3-dimensional battlefield stretching from 8,000 to 25,000 feet, with aircraft maneuvering desperately in every direction. Callahan spotted a group of Bf-109s setting up to attack bombers from below, the classic tactic designed to hit the vulnerable belly turrets. He led his flight down in a slashing attack, achieving complete surprise. His first burst caught a Bf-109 before the German pilot even knew Americans were above him. The fighter exploded, victim of hits in the fuel tank. The German formation scattered. Callahan pursued the nearest target, a Bf-109 attempting to dive away to safety. But the Patchwork fighter's rebuilt engine delivered more power than standard, and Callahan closed the distance despite the German pilot's desperate attempts to escape. At 300 yards, he fired. The Bf-109's engine disintegrated. The pilot bailed out. Callahan pulled up into a steep climb and immediately spotted another target, a Bf-109, attempting to attack a damaged B-17 from behind. Rolling into pursuit, he closed rapidly and fired from 400 yards. His bullets shredded the German fighter's tail section. Control surfaces separated. The aircraft spun away. 3 kills in 5 minutes. But the engagement was far from over. A FW-190 appeared directly ahead. The German pilot apparently as surprised to see Callahan as Callahan was to see him. Both pilots fired simultaneously in a split-second snapshot. Callahan's bullets hit first, striking the FW-190's engine, cowling, and radiator. The German fighter streamed coolant and turned away, mortally wounded. 4 kills in 6 minutes. An extraordinary performance that was being witnessed by dozens of other American pilots. This wasn't luck. This was systematic destruction being delivered by a pilot who understood his aircraft better than anyone else in the theater. Callahan's wingman, trying to stay with him through violent maneuvering, later reported that his Patchwork fighter performed maneuvers they'd never seen attempted in combat. Snap rolls at high speed, vertical reversals that should have bled all energy, sustained high G turns that standard P-51s couldn't match. The aircraft responded to Callahan's commands with a precision that suggested perfect harmony between pilot and machine. But even the best aircraft has limits. During a particularly violent turn, Callahan heard a sharp crack from the right wing. A panel had partially separated, the rivets shearing under combat stress. He eased the turn, checking his controls. Everything still responded, but he could feel a subtle vibration through the airframe. A smart pilot would have disengaged and returned to base. But Callahan spotted one more target. A Bf-110 twin-engine fighter attempting to attack the bomber formation with heavy cannon. These heavily armed destroyers were bomber killers, and allowing one to reach the formation could cost dozens of American lives. Callahan positioned above and behind the Bf-110, timing his approach to coincide with the German fighter's firing pass. As the Bf-110 opened up with its cannon, Callahan opened fire with all 6 machine guns. The concentrated firepower overwhelmed the German fighter's defenses. Both engines erupted in flames. The aircraft rolled inverted and fell away. 5 kills on August 13th, 9 total in 3 days. The Patchwork fighter had absorbed more battle damage and was now missing several panels, leaking fluids, and vibrating alarmingly. But it flew Callahan home. Garcia met him as he climbed down from the cockpit. His expression was grim. "Lieutenant, I don't know how to fix this anymore. We're running out of replacement parts. Every spare panel, every replacement component has already been used on this aircraft. If you keep flying it this hard, eventually there won't be anything left to repair with." "How long to make it airworthy?" Garcia examined the damage. "If we work all night and use parts from 3 other damaged fighters, maybe we can have it ready by dawn." "Make it happen, Sergeant." The night of August 13th, while Garcia's crew performed mechanical miracles, word of Callahan's performance spread throughout the 15th Air Force. 9 kills in 3 days, 4 of them on a single mission. Numbers like that were approaching ace status, and Callahan had achieved them in less than half a week. But more significantly, intelligence officers were analyzing combat reports and discovering something remarkable. The German fighters Callahan was destroying weren't being shot down by superior numbers or lucky shots. They were being systematically outmaneuvered and outfought by a pilot who seemed to understand exactly what his aircraft could do. August 14th brought bomber raids against Hungarian rail yards and German airfields. The Luftwaffe, determined to stop the relentless American attacks, committed their best fighter units. Callahan's squadron encountered Jagdgeschwader 52, an elite unit filled with veteran pilots who had survived years of combat on the Eastern Front. These weren't inexperienced pilots making tactical mistakes. These were professional fighters who understood air combat at the highest level. Callahan engaged 4 of them over Budapest and killed 2 while damaging a third. His Patchwork fighter, now featuring panels from 28 different P-51s, performed flawlessly, despite appearances that suggested it was held together with hope and determination. 11 total kills in 4 days. The mockery had completely stopped. Now pilots were asking Garcia if he could build them Patchwork fighters. The requests were only half joking. August 15th saw the heaviest air combat of the week. German fighters rose in desperate numbers to defend critical targets. Callahan shot down 2 Bf-109s in a morning mission, then flew a second sortie in the afternoon and destroyed another FW-190. 14 confirmed kills in 5 days. Callahan had achieved ace status twice over. His Patchwork fighter had absorbed so much battle damage and incorporated so many replacement parts that it bore almost no resemblance to any standard P-51. It had become something unique, a fighter aircraft that existed nowhere in official documentation, but everywhere in combat effectiveness. August 16th, the final day of Colonel Whitfield's challenge, brought a fighter sweep over German-held Romania. Callahan's flight encountered a group of FW-190s protecting a retreating German ground column. In the engagement that followed, he damaged 2 fighters severely enough that they were later confirmed as kills by ground intelligence. 16 total kills in 6 days. An achievement so remarkable that the 15th Air Force Public Information Office initially refused to believe the reports. Only after exhaustive verification, reviewing gun camera footage, interviewing dozens of witnesses, and checking German loss records, did they accept that 1 pilot in 1 aircraft had destroyed 14 confirmed German fighters in less than a week. The achievement shattered multiple records, highest kill rate for any American pilot in the Mediterranean theater, most kills achieved in 6 consecutive days by any Allied pilot, most effective fighter per sortie ratio in 15th Air Force history, and all of it accomplished in an aircraft that official regulations said shouldn't even be flying. Colonel Whitfield called Callahan to his office on August 17th. "Lieutenant, I told you to demonstrate that your aircraft was superior. You've done considerably more than that. You've proven that sometimes the regulations are wrong." The colonel paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'm receiving requests from Group Command, from Wing Headquarters, even from 15th Air Force Command. Everyone wants to know how you achieved these results. Some of them think you're the best natural pilot in the theater. Others think your aircraft has modifications that should be replicated across the entire fighter force." Callahan considered his response. "Sir, I think it's both. The aircraft has characteristics that benefit aggressive tactics, but those characteristics only matter if the pilot understands how to use them. Most pilots would have killed themselves trying to fly this aircraft the way I fly it. So it's not replicable. The performance is replicable, sir. The methodology might not be. This aircraft works for me because I understand its specific characteristics. A different pilot would need different modifications to achieve similar results." The colonel nodded slowly. "That's what I thought. And that's why I'm not grounding your aircraft, but I am ordering Garcia to document every modification, every non-standard component, every characteristic that makes it different from regulation specifications. If we can't replicate the exact aircraft, at least we can understand the principles." Over the following weeks, Garcia and his crew created exhaustive documentation of the Patchwork fighter. They measured every dimension, photographed every modification, tested every system. The resulting technical report was 37 pages long and identified over 200 deviations from standard P-51 specifications. The report concluded that the aircraft's performance came from a combination of factors. The aft center of gravity improved maneuverability at the cost of stability. The rebuilt engine delivered more power through hand-selected components. The mismatched wings created asymmetric lift that actually improved roll rate in one direction. The reinforced tail section handled high-speed stress better than standard construction, but most significantly, the report noted that the aircraft had been refined through combat damage and repair cycles. Each time it was damaged and repaired, Garcia had made small improvements, slightly stronger panels, better routed hydraulic lines, improved gun mechanisms. The aircraft had evolved through natural selection, keeping modifications that improved performance and discarding those that didn't. The report's final paragraph was written by Callahan himself. This aircraft succeeds not because it violates regulations, but because it demonstrates that regulations are guidelines rather than absolute requirements. In combat, performance matters more than appearance, effectiveness matters more than standardization, and results matter more than procedures. The Patchwork fighter exists as proof that innovation and adaptation can occur anywhere, even in systems designed to prevent them. German intelligence reports from August 1944 reveal their perspective on Callahan's achievements. Multiple Luftwaffe units reported encountering an American pilot flying a heavily damaged fighter that somehow outperformed undamaged aircraft. German pilots called it Der Geist, mit den gebrochenen Flügeln, the ghost with broken wings. One captured Luftwaffe pilot, when shown photographs of Callahan's aircraft, refused to believe it was the same fighter that had shot down his wingman. No aircraft that damaged could fly, he insisted. It must be American propaganda. You show me a wreck and claim it as a combat aircraft. This is not possible. His interrogator assured him it was not only possible, but documented. The German pilot shook his head. Then we have lost this war. If America can make destroyed aircraft fly better than our factory-fresh fighters, what chance do we have? This sentiment appeared repeatedly in German intelligence assessments. The fact that one American pilot in one non-standard aircraft could achieve such results indicated a fundamental difference in military culture. German forces relied on standardization and central control. American forces, when successful, relied on innovation and individual initiative. Hit that like button and subscribe if this story is blowing your mind. We uncover the most incredible military innovations and the people behind them. More amazing content coming your way. Now let's see what happened after these legendary 6 days. Callahan continued flying his Patchwork fighter through September and October 1944. His final combat tally reached 27 confirmed kills, making him one of the highest-scoring American aces in the Mediterranean theater. His aircraft accumulated even more battle damage, more replacement parts, more evidence that it shouldn't exist, but somehow did. In November 1944, the Army Air Force's Technical Service Command requested that Callahan's aircraft be sent to Wright Field in Ohio for detailed analysis. The request emphasized that this was for study purposes only. The aircraft would not be stripped or destroyed. Callahan refused. This aircraft has kept me alive through 63 combat missions. I won't risk it being lost in shipping or dismantled by engineers who don't understand what makes it work. If Technical Service wants to study it, they can send their people here. 3 engineers arrived in December. They spent 2 weeks examining every aspect of the aircraft, conducting tests, interviewing Callahan and Garcia. Their final report validated much of what Garcia had documented, but added important context about why the modifications worked. The engineers determined that standard production aircraft were optimized for average pilots under average conditions. Callahan's Patchwork fighter had been optimized for one specific pilot under combat conditions. This created performance characteristics that were simultaneously superior for Callahan and potentially dangerous for others. The report recommended against attempting to replicate the specific modifications, but suggested that future fighter development should incorporate more adjustability. If aircraft could be customized for individual pilot characteristics, overall combat effectiveness might improve significantly. Some of these recommendations influenced post-war fighter design. Adjustable seats, control sticks with varying grip sizes, rudder pedals with multiple position settings, all concepts that allowed fighters to better accommodate individual pilots. The Patchwork fighter's legacy extended far beyond one pilot's combat record. After the war ended in May 1945, Callahan requested permission to fly his aircraft back to the United States. The request was denied on the grounds that the aircraft didn't meet air safety standards for transatlantic flight. Instead, it was carefully disassembled and shipped to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. The aircraft was reassembled and placed on display at the Air Force Museum in 1952. It remains there today, still showing its patchwork construction, still demonstrating that effectiveness matters more than appearance. The placard beside it reads P-51D Mustang Modified, flown by First Lieutenant Marcus J. Callahan, 27 confirmed aerial victories. This aircraft demonstrates that innovation and adaptation can create extraordinary results from ordinary components. Callahan himself rarely spoke about his wartime achievements. He returned to Wichita, worked in aircraft engineering at Boeing, and raised a family. But in 1967, he gave a speech at the Air Force Academy that became legendary among cadets. Gentlemen, you will be taught regulations, procedures, and standard operating protocols. Learn them, understand them, but never let them prevent you from recognizing that combat is about results, not compliance. My Patchwork fighter existed because I understood that regulations serve a purpose, but that purpose is victory. When regulations conflict with victory, victory must take priority. He paused, looking at the young faces in front of him. Some of you will fly aircraft that meet every specification perfectly. Others will fly machines that have been modified, adjusted, or customized through experience and need. Both can be effective. The difference is understanding what you're flying and why it works. Know your aircraft better than anyone else knows theirs, and you'll survive when others don't. Garcia, who had been invited to attend the speech, added his own perspective during the question period. Lieutenant Callahan's aircraft succeeded because he never asked it to be something it wasn't. He understood its strengths and weaknesses better than the engineers who designed it. That's the secret. Understanding what you have, not wishing for what you don't. The Patchwork fighter's story resonated throughout military aviation. It demonstrated that individual innovation could overcome institutional standardization, that personal understanding could outperform factory specifications, that results mattered more than appearance. Modern fighter development has internalized these lessons. Today's combat aircraft include extensive customization options, adjustable cockpits, programmable flight controls, mission-specific configurations. The rigid standardization that initially rejected Callahan's modifications has given way to recognition that pilot-aircraft harmony improves combat effectiveness. Perhaps most significantly, the Patchwork fighter proved that excellence can emerge from unexpected sources. Garcia's ground crew, working with limited resources and scrounged parts, created an aircraft that outperformed factory-fresh fighters. Their innovation came not from advanced facilities or unlimited budgets, but from necessity, creativity, and deep understanding of their craft. The mockery Callahan and his aircraft endured reveals how institutions often resist innovation. The pilots who ridiculed the scrap heap special couldn't see past its appearance to recognize its capabilities. The officers who wanted it grounded valued procedural compliance over combat effectiveness. Only sustained proof of superior performance overcame their resistance. This pattern repeats throughout military history. Innovations that challenge conventional thinking face dismissal, regardless of merit. Only when results become undeniable does acceptance occur. Callahan's 14 kills in 6 days provided results too dramatic to dismiss. The German pilots who faced Callahan learned a costly lesson. They expected American fighters to conform to standard capabilities and tactics. When Callahan's Patchwork fighter demonstrated performance characteristics outside normal parameters, German pilots found themselves unable to adapt quickly enough. Their training and experience became liabilities rather than assets. Technical analysis reveals why Callahan's aircraft performed so well. The aft center of gravity made it more maneuverable, but required skilled piloting to control. An average pilot might have crashed during aggressive maneuvering. Callahan's exceptional skill transformed potential liability into decisive advantage. The rebuilt engine delivered more power because Garcia hand-selected components for optimal fit and performance. Standard production engines used parts manufactured within tolerance ranges. Garcia's engine used parts at the ideal end of those tolerance ranges, assembled with precision that exceeded production line standards. The mismatched wings created asymmetric lift distribution that improved roll rate to the right while slightly degrading it to the left. Callahan trained himself to preferentially use right-hand rolls, exploiting the advantage while minimizing the disadvantage. He literally customized his tactics to match his aircraft's characteristics. These modifications individually provided small advantages. Combined, they created performance superiority that skilled piloting could exploit devastatingly. The Patchwork fighter demonstrated that optimization beats standardization when individual skill can fully utilize customized characteristics. Marcus Callahan passed away in February 1998 at age 77. His obituary in the Wichita newspaper mentioned his 27 aerial victories, but focused more on his 50-year career as an aircraft engineer. The innovations he contributed to post-war fighter design probably saved more lives than his wartime combat record, though they received far less recognition. His Patchwork fighter remains on display at the National Museum of the United States Air Force. Visitors often pause before it, trying to reconcile its mismatched appearance with its extraordinary combat record. The museum conducts special tours explaining the aircraft's history, using it to teach lessons about innovation, adaptation, and the difference between appearance and capability. Fighter pilots still visit the aircraft, studying it, trying to understand what made it special. Most eventually conclude that the aircraft itself wasn't special. What was special was the combination of a skilled pilot, a dedicated crew chief, and the freedom to optimize for combat effectiveness rather than regulatory compliance. The story of Marcus Callahan and his Patchwork fighter teaches lessons that transcend aviation. It demonstrates that excellence can emerge from constrained resources. That innovation thrives when people understand their tools deeply. That results matter more than procedures. That mockery from those who don't understand means nothing compared to performance from those who do. Most profoundly, it proves that the best solutions don't always come from the top down. Sometimes they emerge from the bottom up, created by people with limited resources but unlimited determination. Garcia and his crew, working with scrounged parts in field conditions, created something that factory engineers with unlimited resources never imagined. They mocked his Patchwork fighter, called it the scrap heap special, the flying junkyard, Patch's junk. They said it was an embarrassment, a disgrace, a death trap. They demanded it be grounded, stripped for parts, removed from service. Then Marcus Callahan shot down 14 German fighters in 6 days, and the mockery stopped. The Patchwork fighter flew on, carried Callahan through 63 combat missions, helped him achieve 27 aerial victories, and proved that sometimes the greatest weapons aren't built in factories according to specifications. Sometimes they're assembled from broken pieces by people who understand that excellence requires looking past appearances to see what actually matters: performance, results, victory. The Ghost with broken wings taught the Luftwaffe to fear an aircraft that looked like it couldn't fly. The Scrap Heap Special taught the Army Air Forces that regulations serve victory, not the reverse. And Marcus Callahan proved that one pilot with a deep understanding of his unique aircraft could achieve results that 100 pilots with perfect aircraft never would. In the end, they stopped mocking. They started learning. And that made all the difference. The Patchwork fighter exists today as testament to innovation, adaptation, and the understanding that what matters most cannot be measured by appearance, only by achievement. It looks like a collection of mismatched parts because that's exactly what it is. But it performed like a thoroughbred because the people who built it and flew it understood that victory comes from capability, not conformity. They mocked his Patchwork fighter until he shot down 14 planes in 6 days. Then they understood that excellence recognizes no standard except results.